Welcome back, Tracy. Of course, in our last episode, we touched a little bit about how the mundane sets in, the routine sets in, and the disagreements set in. So maybe today's episode, we can talk about how, when they get very serious, like, what are some of people's inklings about that this is really not working. One of the things which I hear from a lot of people is that if you find that you're on the wrong train, the sooner you jump off, the better. And I don't know if that is a good idea in a marriage, but just opening up the discussion to when do you start looking at that this is actually not working?
That's such a great question and a complicated question, because only those in that relationship dynamic know what's really at play and what's unfolding. And as we were talking about last time, like, conflict is vital, I think, and is an invitation to kind of look at our unfinished business and what we need to tend to, and in ourselves, but also in relationship with another. But absolutely, like, I think at times it calls for the question of, like, do I need to get off this train or change my transit?
When they say the sooner the better, and here's something which you, let's assume you've come from this place of this fairy tale, and you're going to carry this to your grave, this relationship to your grave. How do you, I think most people are reluctant to get off at the first station because they're trying to make it work. They're trying to make the journey worthwhile. They're trying to make sure that, because they are the ones who've jumped into this relationship, so they are saying, well, I wasn't wrong to begin with. People are also trying to validate their own decision of being in this relationship as well.
Yeah, and I think perhaps a question to ask oneself is getting off this train in service to that romantic ideal and that fantasy and that idea of what you think a relationship should look like, and as it relates to that conversation we were having about it being all perfection and romance. But I think, like, after some efforts, and because we know the conflict and is going to happen, like, and our ways of being need to be pushed up against one another to really wrestle with some of these things, and it offers that opportunity to grow and find deeper intimacy and connection with another. However, like, there are times when you change. We know people in relationship change in such a way that might not be aligning with that same path, and there is an opportunity at that point to get off.
Yeah, and a lot of people talk about how this is not just about jumping off, but you could make the journey a bit different together. There's increasing conversations about how people negotiate who they are in a marriage, and how they are, as I said, there's a lot more to it than just the two people involved at that stage. If you have children, if you have economics together, you have a home together, maybe a business together, how do you show up in that transition of your relationship?
Yeah, it's an opportunity to really revision, I think, the relationship. And it's like, maybe there needs to almost be a death of what was and a birth of, like, what are we really wanting to participate in, and like, how do we want to be in relationship? And that requires a whole new revisioning.
When you start with, in this relationship, which you are thinking is a lifetime of something which is going to retain some aspects in this sort of a very consistent fashion. So I'm going back to the reasons why people get married. Is that something which they haven't, is that the wrong premise? Because this journey is gonna take new directions. This journey is gonna go to different stations. And a lot of people don't even know what stations it will take to. It's a lifetime journey if you're trying to keep it together. So is that where people need to dislodge from their original concepts of why they're in it together?
Yeah, it depends on, again, like, what that concept is holding. If it's a kind of rigidity and, like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be and how we were supposed to perform this in life, I think that can be problematic, because I think, again, that's something that manages the relationship. It strips the life energy out of it. If you're not open to change and co-creating something new, then I think that can be rather like strip the life out of the relationship.
Yeah, and so is there, even in our modern context, Tracy, is there more resistance to how that can be changed? Because there is still the traditional forces are all around you too. And I think that puts pressure on people.
I think in our day and age, I certainly have seen like people are reimagining relationship and what that can look like, what versions that can look like with another. But you're right, like the myths of what a harmonious family and relationship are supposed to look like are very strong in our culture. And I think we keep turning towards that at times. At least I think the broader systems and institutions want us to kind of keep turning to that. They like a certain idea of the way relationship is formed. But I think it's this opportunity for cultures, families, couples to look at like, how is this serving us? Or is it serving us? Yeah.
There's still stigma around breakups, and it feels like death. Like you talk about death do us part, but if that journey it doesn't culminate in that sort of a concept, the ones who are parting, they kind of experience the same grief and say it is like death. How much pain does all of this cause, and how much is it because of the emotional trauma people experience, and how much is it attributed to what the expectation is from the world around them?
I mean, it's immensely painful, like you said. It is like a parting, a death, and a change, and it is an immense amount of grief. I think if it wasn't hard, that would be a problem too. Like there's something you're saying goodbye to, so that is huge. I guess also what's coming to mind as you're asking that question too is perhaps like, what is the pain involved with staying in it? Like, is there something too that could serve the village or the community or the family system in a way to also disrupt a certain kind of pattern that has been unfolding that's not supportive to the people involved?
I mean, they may look very good to the outside world, but inside they are both hurting. Let's talk about, like we're talking about this whole concept as if both can be on the same page all the time, even in terms of what the marriage is looking like. One partner may think this is all great, and the other may think, no, it's not serving me. So what happens to that dynamic when you're both not on the same page?
Yeah, I think that's a real difficult dynamic if one person is wanting to continue and the other is ready to jump off that train, like you said, if we use that metaphor. And I think often it's hard because one person looks like the bad guy and one is the one who is being left. And I think that's tricky because it's like you're setting up almost like the roles. It's like one is the victim and one is the villain. And really, like it's a dynamic. You have to look at it like a system. I mean, if it's not working, it's a pattern and something that's interrelational. And it's hard because I think also the person who wants to leave, it's hard. A lot of guilt can come up, especially if you were messaged a certain way of being in a relationship, you're worried about disappointing others, especially if there's children involved, that's immense. And then for the person who wants to stay, I mean, it can feel like, again, you're in this position of not having choice, and that can be very difficult as well. But I always ask, wouldn't someone want to be in relationship with someone who wants to be there? And for the other person, wouldn't you want that person also to be happy and in another situation if they're in that kind of dynamic you're describing?
So how do couples get to that place, Tracy, so that if they, I guess, like one of my questions is, and of course there's probably a lot of different ways you can answer this as well, and I'll let you do that, but also, is that whole concept of permanence now impacting how people are feeling, this whole victimization? So if one person says, I'm out, or I want out because I'm just not fulfilled, is another word which a lot of people use. I'm not fulfilled, right? I'm not fulfilled in this way or that way. And if the concept is the permanence, the concept is this is the long haul journey, and then if people start to feel that, no, this journey is suffocating, or this journey is not fulfilling me, and one makes that decision, is that concept of permanence impacting how the other one is also going to respond to this?
It's a strong message we've been given that this should be forever, and you should surrender to it completely at all costs. I mean, it's a very big message we've been given in many contexts and cultures. I know in my own, like for sure, that you make it work. And so, I mean, in that way, the person, that narrative can really feed into the dynamic, but I think that's where it's really important to name. As my therapist has said to me, like, she loves the idea of like people coming together in ritual and ceremony and saying, well, we will be together until we decide like this is no longer like serving us. Now, that can come across as a bit flaky too. I get it in the sense that, as soon as you feel like something's wrong, it's not about that. But I think people know when you've come to a place, if there's so much stuckness and quality of deadness to a relationship that can't be revived after some efforts, then
can't flag
something to look
dead
at there.
Horse.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really like what you're saying, that the oath is not about till death do us part. It is till, and I totally hear you, like, where is that whole, and I think that's the purpose of these discussions as well, that where does the system self-correct itself, that you are not putting that pressure. Of course, it's beautiful if relationships can last till death, and it's beautiful if people can grow old together and take care of each other. But if that's not how it's working out, given that two individuals who grow and evolve over a period of time, or maybe they were mismatched to begin with, that how do systems correct themselves so that everlasting pressure is taken off? Kudos to those who can make it.
Yeah.
But let's lighten up on the ones who can't.
Yeah. And when you say how the systems correct themselves, like what are they correcting to?
So the marriage as an institution, for example, like, if the everlasting pressure is the everlasting pressure. I think we did an article together too, Tracy, where we were saying, can there be contracts to say, hey, renew vows every, 15 years, and then look at what's going on, then look at it at 20 years to say, does it still work? Does it still not work? But if it is set up in a way where you're not thinking that this is for life, perhaps the shame of getting out of it would be lighter. The victimization of if somebody's doing it to you would be lighter, because that's not the way it was meant to be.
Yeah, because I think with that pressure, it's like we start to perform a relationship versus really participate in it, and we feel stuck in it and in these kind of roles. And that's just one response that came as you were sharing. And another thing I feel important to say, that I also want to ensure I'm reflecting on my own bias, like being able to leave is often a privilege, like in a lot of dynamics, like some relationships, like where security or a kind of arrangement is so important that it's very difficult to do that. So I just want to make sure I name that it's not always easy in that way, and not always a choice. And I know I have this bias towards like what's life-giving and what's energizing and what's going to create a real sense of intimacy and connection in a relationship dynamic. And I know that sometimes people choose other ways of being, and that's absolutely okay too. That might work in those relationship dynamics as well.
Next time, maybe we can talk about how these structures can look like to begin with. And to our viewers, we certainly hope you will be joining us in our next episodes of the conversation as well.